Welcome back to the channel, it's great to have you here. So for data hoarders and those interested in NAS and storage in general, the topic of shucking external hard disks is a common area of discussion. This is the process of buying an external hard drive, opening it and then using the drive inside for other purposes. The cost aspects of this varies, but there are some great deals that come up for these external drives from time to time, and this actually can be a really cheap way of picking up a lot of high volume storage. I've picked up a lot of these in various sizes, and today I'm going to answer two key questions related to the WD Elements external drive, and specifically in this case it's the 20 terabyte unit. Firstly, I'm going to show you how to open these without breaking the case so that you have a chance to put this back together and without anyone knowing if you need to perform a warranty return. Secondly, I'm going to fully performance test in a number of scenarios so you can see how the drive performs in its case and out of its case, and I'm also going to compare it to an Ultrastar 20 terabyte enterprise drive. It might be easy to believe that it's really an Ultrastar inside, and because Seagate, for example, often just bundle drives such as the Exos into their version of this, but it isn't so simple, and we're going to get into all of that. I will also test the Ultrastar in the enclosure to see how it performs, and the main reason is that it actually reveals quite a lot about what's going on the small logic board that allows you to plug this into a computer via USB. I'm going to include all the Amazon affiliate links below so you can find all the hardware I test today, and you can go check out the current state of pricing for those external devices and maybe hopefully pick up a bargain. First of all, let's frame this by looking at both the drive inside of this enclosure and comparing it to the Ultrastar HC560 20 terabyte enterprise drive. It's pretty clear they're built on the same platform because visually they look nearly identical. There are some markings that differ on my chucked unit up here, and we can see that it has a different sticker, and usually for the USB enclosure drives from Western Digital it has its own model number, and in this case it's a WD200 EDGZ. Underneath, the PCB also looks identical and all the connections are the same, as is the chassis casting. So it's possible there are different internals here, but these actually weigh gram for gram exactly the same, so it's very unlikely it's the platter count, and there's probably minimal physical differences. So this isn't really a surprise, but there are some differences in the firmware, and we're going to run a bunch of tests to find out exactly how that plays out. But let's quickly rewind and show you how to extract the disk without breaking the case. I'm not going to tell you that you won't break it because it depends on how heavy-handed you are, but I have opened many of these without damage, and I can at least show you how I do this and show you how it's fitted together so you can see why this approach works. How this case works is that there's an outer shell which wraps around on three sides, and then there's an inner case which slides out the back of that shell. We do not need to pry open any plastic, and doing this is what likely breaks those tabs that sometimes occurs when people open these drives. It's useful to know where these tabs are, but as you see, it isn't crucial. Now in this case, the video you see here is actually a 14 terabyte unit, but it's exactly the same for the 20 terabyte. You don't need to remove the plastic, but it is satisfying, isn't it? And then we use a pry tool, but this is not to leave open the case, but rather it's to place some pressure on the inner case to slide it out of the casing. The pry tool can just be pushed into the gap between the inner casing and the front of the shell like this, and you can see that this will make the back corner here bulge slightly, but it won't slide out yet. Next, you can use one of these opening picks, and you use this to slide into the seams. Now these picks are sometimes used to separate adhesive, but there is no adhesive here. And in this case, I'm actually using a guitar pick to do this, and these are very cheap to pick up, and they do the job just great. So you can insert this into the seam, slide it up and down, and the clips inside will disengage. And you would do that without any need to pry, potentially breaking those tabs. Now you may need to run it up and down a few times, but as you see, it should pop out, aided by the pressure that we're applying with that pry tool. The important thing here is that you don't need to do any prying with the pick, you just slide it up and down to release the clips. It's the orange lever here at the back that's doing the work, and all the pick is really doing is opening around a 1mm gap to disengage those clips. Now you repeat on the other side, and there's two clips on either edge, and you can tell when they're released. There's a little click sound often, but you can also see, and I'm using my left hand here to keep the outward pressure with the pry tool. If it doesn't come out immediately, just persist and it will. Now you can see here that the clips are disengaged and it's ready to remove, and after this it's simple to slide the internal case out. If you do want to put this back together, you just slide the unit back in on the rails and it will just click back together. And you can see now the label on top of the disc, and you can tell it's a helium unit by the cover and the lack of screws. Turning it over, you can also see the small logic board which connects to the USB, power supply and to the SATA interface. And there's this clear plastic tab which carries the white activity light from the board to the front of the case. Now you're going to remove this through the front, and if you do forget to remove this and you try to remove the disc, this does snap very easily, so make sure you pull it out. It's not very important, but definitely a giveaway if you've opened it and you do try and return it later. Now the disc is not retained with any screws, you just need to push out these rubber shock absorbers. All four are different, you can work out which is which later, but it doesn't hurt to organise them or label them now. Now the end away from the SATA connector is the easiest to get out first, and then the disc is easily freed. Then next we need to remove the logic board, which is just held in place with two screws, one on the front here and one on the side next to the USB port. Again, I would put all these parts in a small Ziploc bag for safekeeping. Okay, with that done, let's get to the testing. I'm going to test all the following. First of all, there's a large file write test, which is filling the disk with 10 GB files sequentially until it's 99% full. And then the next test, I read all those files off again. Then writing a mix of 5500 files adding up to 10 gig one after another, testing performance of mixed file sizes. And this relies more heavily on metadata management and on write caching. And then reading those files off again. And then finally, a non-sequential rewrite of 20% of those mixed files across the entire disk. And this will tell us in total how the disk works, where it performs well, and also how it's going to compare against the Ultrastar. Let's get to it. First of all, looking at the large file writes for the Elements hard disk model WD200 EDGZ when it's snuggled up inside its enclosure. Now this starts out at around 235 megabytes per second, rising to 245 megabytes peak by around 5% of the disk fill capacity, and then it steadily drops off, finishing at about 120 on the inner tracks of the platter. So speed is very consistent and it forms a very steady performance line. Then, looking at the drive performance when it's shucked, connected via SATA, and tested with OS write cache enabled, we actually see a similar profile, but actually a little lower performance. Also, the line is far choppier, and we have this dip in performance starting at around 60% and lasting till around 85%. So there's quite a few interesting things here. The lower performance is likely related how the enclosure handles write acknowledgements. Normally when the file system writes data, it waits for a confirmation that the file write completed, so it knows that data was correctly stored. If write caching is used, this may just be confirmation that the file was written to cache and not to the actual disk, and this is done for performance reasons. If write cache is disabled, this can cripple write performance as every operation needs that confirmation from the drive that the data is on the platter. So I would speculate that the enclosure's logic board is answering that the write completed, and that could result in faster writes. It may not be ideal from a data persistence standpoint, however, but the expectation of a USB drive is going to be a bit lower. Now, this is also likely why the line is more choppy when writing to SATA. When writing to write cache, the line can be choppy as the cache empties and fills, faster writes when the cache has room, slower when the cache needs to flush the disk. And then this dip at the end of the SATA write is also very common. It's seen on most drives when performing full back-to-back disk fills of large files. If the drive is given downtime, this doesn't seem to happen, so it looks like it's just related to metadata management on the drive. When the drive reaches a certain point, it has to do some organization of metadata, and this also doesn't seem to happen when it's connected via USB. So overall, faster performance actually on the USB interface, but I suspect a little bit less care about integrity and assuring data persistence. So overall though, there isn't really much in it. If we compare this to the enterprise class Ultrastar DC-HC560, when attached to SATA, we see that the drive is faster than the Elements unit, starting at around 265 megabytes per second, rising to 280, and then dropping off over the disk surface to around 135. Now what is actually interesting is if we put the Ultrastar in the USB enclosure, then we see slightly higher throughput performance by around 10 megabytes per second, so it starts at 277, rising to about 293 and then again dropping off steadily to a similar level as it had with the SATA connection. So the Ultrastar, despite looking like the same physical drive, actually performs around 20% better for this type of operation. What is quite revealing though is that despite the performance difference, the profile of the performance is very similar between the two drives, especially with the structure in the first 2 terabytes of disk space, and that does suggest that the two disks do have a lot in common, physically at least. Large reads show a very similar behaviour, with the Ultrastar around 20% faster again. For this transfer type, the performance delta between the enclosure and the SATA interface is very close for both drive types, with the Elements marginally faster on USB and the Ultrastar marginally faster on SATA. Now, this isn't surprising in my opinion, as reads take both the write cache behavior and the write confirmation process out of the equation, and it'll be primarily governed by how quickly data can be read off the disk surface. What we can say is that the USB interface does not seem to be any kind of bottleneck versus SATA. Mixed writes have a starker difference, however, with the Elements drive on SATA again being slowest, peaking at around 190 megabytes per second sustained throughput, with this drive on USB performing better at around 225 sustained. And this is actually marginally higher than the Ultrastar when it's connected on SATA, which comes in at 220, but again, the Ultrastar on the USB performs best for max sustained write speed of 250 megabytes per second. Now again, it seems counterintuitive, but it's interesting, and again, I think likely comes down to the significant overhead of getting write confirmations for large numbers of small files, which it seems the Elements logic board may cheat at a little. So probably lower confidence that writes were indeed done, but probably mitigated because a problem with a write may result in a USB related error or a timeout. But all that aside, I think the most important takeaway here is that if you shuck the Elements drive and use it for mass storage, then the performance is reasonable and solid, but around 15% lower than the Ultrastar for mixed writes. Mixed reads, again, they follow a similar pattern, with the Ultrastar being around 267 megabytes sustained and about 220 megabytes seen on the Elements drive when these drives are connected via SATA, with the Ultrastar recording a slightly higher 274 megabytes per second versus the Elements 230, again is around a 20% advantage to the Ultrastar when they're on the USB interface, and both drives getting a marginal 10 megabytes per second improvement when using USB. I'm not going to dwell on the details of the mixed rewrite test, but you can see that performance is very close at around 140 to 150 megabytes peak, falling to about 100 megabytes between both the Elements and the Ultrastar in this case. And the main thing this tells me is that the drives are likely both running the same rotational speed of 7200 that's reported by SMART. Temperatures are also unsurprisingly impacted by the enclosure, and not in a positive way, as you probably guess. Despite some ventilation, this does not really allow for any significant airflow to the drive, and we can see that in this chart of drive temperatures for the Elements drive. Now the bottom cluster of lines here in red, oranges and greens kind of shows large mixed read and writes when connected via SATA in my external disk enclosure, with the purple and blue above the same operations but when in the Elements USB enclosure. Now all these operations run consistently around 10 degrees C warmer when in the USB enclosure. Probably not a big surprise. Now the same is also true for the temperature test when running the Ultrastar in the enclosure again. Temps are very similar in and out, so the Element drives run at fairly consistent temperatures to the Ultrastar of around 45 to 47 degrees SATA touch and about 55 to 57 degrees when on the USB. Shucking the drive is ultimately an act of kindness here, and it's probably going to be beneficial for the drive's lifespan, especially if you run this drive 24/7. Okay, conclusions coming next, but I would be super appreciative if you could take a second to hit the like if this was useful or interesting. It's actually the best way to help a small channel like this one. And if you do want more storage, performance and related content, I would also of course love it if you sub to the channel. It costs you nothing, but it does show the algorithm that this content is valuable. You can also drop your comments and thoughts below on buying drives to Shuck and the results. I'm actually testing a 24TB Seagate external drive at the moment, and there's actually some interesting things there to share. But I appreciate all your support as always. Thank you so much. So, the Elements hard drives are regularly available at good prices. They appear to be a way for Western Digital to ship oversupply of units which appear to be based on the same or at least very similar hardware as the high-end discs. Monitor for prices and pick up these when they're on sale, such as Prime Days or Black Friday. Again, look, the links are below. You can go check where they are right now. Though the discs are likely physically very similar, performance is 15 to 20% better on the Ultrastar compared to the Elements drive when shut. If you put it in array, honestly this is unlikely to even matter in real terms, but it's good to understand that this isn't an Ultrastar drive inside. It's quite possible the drives are just as capable, but are intentionally performance limited with firmware to reduce cannibalization of the high-end market, or just to temper shucking and reselling of drives. Warranty is going to be shorter also, and this just may be a way to sell oversupply and reduce support cost risks at the lower price point. It's also possible these drives that didn't quite make the cut for some reason to be enterprise grade. The enclosures do run these drives hotter also by about 10 degrees, which isn't going to be good for them in the longer term, so shucking them is the kind thing to do. Show that drive some love. I would also fully surface scan the disks on USB prior to shucking. Though I have showed you how to open these without breaking the casing, there is always a risk you get a warranty pushback if they know it's been opened. So test the drive to make sure it's sound, and then follow the process I showed, and keep all the components in a Ziploc in the original box so that you can reconstruct the drive and return it later if you need to. So that's it. Happy shucking. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next.